Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra, because we are on a Thursday. Why are we on a Thursday? You're all thinking, some of you, perhaps none of you. That's simply because this week's been messed up a little bit, by the fact that we had the football last night. So I couldn't do Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra on a Wednesday. And then tomorrow night, Friday, it's the blessed BBC proms are starting. Awesome sauce. So I shall be tuning in for that, quite frankly. So I've decided this week we would do ghost stories on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So here we are. What are we reading? We are dipping in and out of various ghost stories, ghost stations books by Bruce Barrymore Halpenny. The reason why we're dipping in and out of various is, apart from the first one, which is very well edited, his later books are not very well edited. In fact, he has this annoying habit of writing and he has this annoying habit of punctuating sentences with ... or say you have a sentence that reads, he arrived at the station and soon was on duty. Bruce will write it, he arrived at the station and, comma, was soon on duty. Doesn't need the comma. So anyway, so we shall be dipping in and out of various ghost story books by Bruce. And the other thing I've got is I'm armed with a pencil so that I can mark the pages so that I know which ones I've read. I know. Just going to clean the old camera there. That's better. What are we drinking? We are drinking, we've got a subscription beer, the Loba Negra craft porter, Mexican beer, unfiltered and pasteurized. Loba Negra is a dark beer with a firm character shaped by roasted malts that dominate over the noble hops. Its medium to full body and deep, silky black color reveal bold roasted flavors and aromas with rich accents of coffee and chocolate. The generous amount of Chiapas cocoa or cacao we use enhances its chocolate notes. Oh, I'm liking it already, creating a smooth yet complex drinking experience. Ingredients: water, malted barley, hops, yeast, cocoa, allergens, including gluten, shown in bold. 5.5%. Goodness me. This is not going to be a lightweight beer. And we haven't even started a ghost story yet. And already we have a dead soldier. And run, BT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
Indeed. And we will be washing it down with the Bau Muir. So, armed with my pencil, so I can mark the pages, mark the ones we've read. The Hauntings at Handley Page. Mr. A.J. Charlton from Langworth near Lincoln worked as an aircraft fitter with Handley Page Limited for 25 years. He was with the firm until they went into liquidation in March 1970. After the collapse of Handley Page, he joined the security firm and, was one of the security guards engaged to patrol the hangars and buildings which had been part of the Handley Page factory and offices. It was at the Handley Page factory that Mr. Charlton met his first ghost. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. And after the collapse of Handley Page, he joined the security firm and, was one of the security guards engaged to patrol the hangars. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce. I know I keep doing this, but the Handley Page works were at Radlett Aerodrome, just south of St. Albans in Hertfordshire. In the early days, Radlett was nothing more than a grass field. During the war years, the Handley Page factory produced bombers, first the twin-engined Hampden, then the mighty four-engined Halifax bomber. At peak production, Halifaxes were leaving the production line at Radlett at the rate of 40 aircraft a month during 1944. After the war ended, Handley Page at Radlett produced Hastings and Hermes aircraft. The Hermes story started badly when, on the 2nd of December 1945, should be a comma after 1945, never mind, the prototype GAGSS took off from Radlett on its maiden flight. The aircraft ran into trouble, and after a succession of dives and stalls, it hit the ground in an inverted dive, killing the pilots Talbot and Wright. The wreckage was almost totally destroyed by fire. Radlett then entered the jet age in the early 1950s with production of the Victor bomber, and for Mr. Charlton and many of the workforce, the Ghost age. At 10:35 a.m. on the morning of the 20th of August 1959, the top secret Victor Mark II bomber XH668 lifted off from the runway at Boscombe Down in Wiltshire on a routine test flight. But like the top secret Harrier in a previous story, it was destined never to return. It first flew on the 20th of February 1959 and had been retained by Handley Page for trials. The Victor bomber flight path was across the Pembrokeshire coast and out over the Irish Sea. At 11:37 a.m., its position was 265 degrees, 16 miles from Strumble Head, and its speed was Mach 0.9. The Victor bomber was being plotted by a shore radar station when suddenly the echo on the radar display disappeared. 1 second it was there, the next it had gone. At the time the Victor disappeared from the radar screen, its height was unknown, but it should have been around 52,000 feet. With the Victor overdue, the search and rescue teams were put on standby, and as time passed, Royal Air Force Coastal Command, Shackletons, and naval ships began to search over the sea, but all to no avail. As each drew a blank, the fears for the Victor crew, squadron leaders R.J. Morgan and G.B. Stockman, and flight lieutenants L.N. Williams and R.J. Hannaford, and Mr. R. Williams, the chief test observer of Handley Page, grew. Operation Victor search got underway, and it was controlled by HMS Harrier. It involved more than 40 ships and 4,000 men and women, and it took over a year. I think we will have a quick swing of the old beer in the magnificent Rush beer glass. Thank you, viewers Kirsten and Steve in the United States. Lange me var. Oh, that does not disappoint. That is very nice. The top secret Victor bomber XH668 crashed into the Irish Sea just 6 months to the day it first flew, and it had logged just 100 flying hours, and all 5 crew were killed. But from their watery grave, the ghost of one of the crew returned to haunt the Handley Page factory. Why had the ghost returned? Did he know the reason for the crash? Was it to warn others? Or make the mere mortals pay for their mistake? The Victor bomber hit the sea at a speed of over 800 miles per hour, and it broke up into 1,000 pieces. The crew had no time to act. In fact, they were listening to Mrs. Dale's diary. It was later established that the loss of a pitot head, a 2-foot metal tube, had been the cause of the crash. But was that the real cause? Was the ghost saying otherwise? What was the reason for the haunting? What was the reason for haunting the Handley Page factory? A few weeks after the Victor bomber crash, many workers on the night duty staff claimed to have seen the ghost of one of the Victor crew. One man swore he had seen the ghost of Mr. Williams. Rumours became very rife over the weeks, and they reached the ears of Mr. Charlton, who worked permanent night shift. He thought no more of it until one night, as he explained. I personally saw one of the crew walking across the hangar, apparently heading for his car, which was parked outside. Being as only a handful of fitters were working that night, I assumed he must be an intruder. I moved across to intercept him, but when I got close, he just disappeared without glancing in my direction. It was only then did Mr. Charlton realize that it was a ghost that he had tried to intercept. He now knew that the rumors about the ghost were true. He had just witnessed it. The apparition I saw was as he would appear, ready for flight, said Mr. Charlton. He was wearing sort of boiler suit overalls, and when I saw him, he looked so real and walked towards him because he would have been an intruder at that time, which was 1 a.m. And it was not to be his last confrontation with the ghost. On another occasion, when I and another man were the only two working in the hangar, the ghost was seen again, said Charlton. My assistant had gone across the hangar to the toilet, and he came back rather agitated. He kept mumbling that he had seen someone walking about, and it was very eerie. I tried to assure him that it could not be so, as we were the only two in the factory, but he would not listen. In the end, I went to see if there was anybody, but there was nobody there. I saw nothing. Then, on another occasion, when a number of fitters were working, I and my assistant proceeded to the Victor bomber we were to work on for the night. When we got to the Victor, we stood under the wings and were about to get our tools ready when suddenly a heavy trolley which had been left under the wing started bucking and jumping about, although there was no one else about and no cause for it. Was this a warning? Had the ghost returned to warn others? Whatever the reason, Mr. Charlton was certain of one thing. I think Radley Aerodrome and all the buildings must be one of the most haunted in the country, he said. It's easy to see why Mr. Charlton comes to that conclusion when we look at the catalogue of ghostly happenings. I think we are ready for another quick beer. Oh, itchy nose. Slimes. Just going to mark the. Now we know we've read that one. Mr. Charlton is not a man to be easily frightened by the sight of ghosts, but many of the workers were. One night, the night stoker ran to the night security man, scared and breathless, panting that he had been visited by a ghost in his boiler house. He was too scared to go back, and nothing could induce him to do so. So what had he seen to instill such fear into him? I cannot answer that. All clock patrols at Handley Page were done by the Works Fire Brigade, and many of them saw many ghosts. And, many of them saw many ghosts. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce. And many of them saw many ghosts. Some were too scared with the ghostly encounters and resigned the job. They had good reason to do so. There had recently been a suicide at the Handley Page factory, and, everything comes in threes. Doesn't need the comma. The man killed was a spray painter who had been working on a Victor bomber. It was said at the time that he had slipped off, but many knew he saw the ghost. Was this what caused him to fall? Some blame the ghost. On another occasion, the ghostly encounter happened while Mr. Charlton and his assistant were working on a Hastings aircraft that had come in for repair. My assistant liked to shut his eyes during the dinner breaks, said Charlton. My favourite spot was the wardroom near the front of the aircraft. On this particular occasion, he was woken up by a severe slamming of the door, although no one else was aboard the aircraft. Another fitter who was working on this aircraft said to me one night that there was someone else on board, although this was not so. On the 21st of April 1962, Sir Frederick Handley Page died, and with him died his aircraft factory. Handley Page, one-time builders of the first successful four-engine bomber in the Second World War, had to drop out of large aircraft manufacture and instead continue in the civil aviation field. But the end of the road was near for Radlett, and in March 1970, Handley Page was finally wound up and the haunted airfield closed. But not before the haunted airfield had claimed its third victim. What are we up to? 17 minutes. Good Lord. Slange. The second death was a young man who was helping to remove some ducts from the false ceiling. He stepped back onto a hardball panel and fell to his death. Mr. Charlton was there at the time, and he helped the ambulance man to put him on a stretcher. Again, they said it was the ghost that frightened him and caused him to step backwards. The third man to die was a Saturday night burglar. He had been removing copper piping in the same area where the others had died, and he too fell to his death. Did he see the ghost? After Handley Page closed down, Mr. Charlton joined the security firm which took over security for the old Radlett Aerodrome, and he was on night duty patrols. The security firm's headquarters were at the main gate, a mile along the runway, and because of the distance involved, they used a van in which to go and check all the buildings. Correct use of a comma there, Bruce. Well done. Between patrols, the men sat in the rest room. This was haunted, said Charlton. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, not every morning, we would hear the back door open and footsteps walk past our restroom door and go out at the front, and comma, go out at the front. Doesn't need a comma. I used to dash to open the door, but never saw anything. Some of the other staff were a bit scared of this. One section of the old Handley Page factory was taken over by Granada Publishing. This was the hangar in which Charlton had worked as a fitter. Now he was a security guard and checked over his old hangar 3 times a night. Whilst I never saw anything on my night patrols, the building was empty. I often heard voices which confirmed what one of the Handley Page patrolmen had mentioned some time previously, said Charlton. Another of the buildings that Mr. Charlton and his colleagues patrolled had been taken over by flare path printers, and they had to make sure that all the lights were out when they left. Mr. Charlton was on duty one night in 1972 when he saw all the office lights on in the building. It was about 7:30 in the evening, and he thought they must be working late. But unknown to Charlton, it was the ghosts who were working, and he walked into another ghostly encounter. With all the office lights on, I thought they must be working late, he said. So I went into the flare path printer's office to inquire what time they would be going. But when I entered the building, there was nobody there except an elderly gent sitting at a desk. So I went towards him, but on getting close, he just vanished. Mr. Charlton was well aware of the ghosts, and he took it all in his stride. He did not, however, like the doom-laden atmosphere, as he explained. Another eerie building to enter was the one occupied by President Office Furniture. 3 men had lost their lives in this area at different times, and I think their ghosts still roam about there. After unlocking the doors at night and entering, all may be quiet for a while. Then a loud bang, but after switching on all the lights, nothing could be seen, only the evil atmosphere. We can't see an atmosphere, but no. And he added, this was the area where previously the Handley Page firemen had seen ghosts and resigned rather than carry on working in such a haunted place. Mr. Charlton has now retired after working 25 years at Handley Page Aircraft Factory at Radlett Aerodrome, and then as a security guard at the old aerodrome, then as a security guard at the old aerodrome. 16 years were on permanent night shift duties, and over those years, he had many ghostly encounters. Just having a quick look to see. Right, I'll mark this one, the Old Parsonage Hotel. It's hard work. Like I say, why he has this habit of writing a sentence and then having an and is the bridge to the next part of the sentence, doesn't need a comma. Commas break up the narrative flow because it's like you're diverting the reader onto another section. Doesn't need it. It's an and oh, it boils my bits. It really does. Anyway, slange me bar. What are we up to? 22 minutes. Now we will have a bit of the scotch. Oh, lovely. The Old Parsonage Hotel. Just walked into the bar at the Old Parsonage, and there it was, a figure of a woman, said Jeff Smithson. She was sort of greyish-white, like a hazy look, sort of floated towards me and then turned and disappeared before my eyes. It was a ghost, all right. The Old Parsonage Hotel and restaurant at Crewkerne in Somerset is reputed to be haunted. Had Jeff Smithson seen a ghost? The Old Parsonage has had many sightings of a ghostly figure of a woman, which has become known as the White Lady, and it certainly has the history to attract a ghost. As the name suggests, the building was originally the parsonage to Crewkerne's famous 15th century church. Indeed, a secret tunnel to the church is rumoured to exist, but then the tunnel from the church to the mansion stories related to about almost every village in England. But then the tunnel from the church to the mansion stories related to about almost every village in England. But in this story, there is a germ of truth in the secret passage. The building is partly 15th and partly 18th century and is of great historical and architectural interest. But it is also of great interest regarding the mysterious White Lady ghost and the secret passage. Bill and Betty Bennett called in the summer of 1982. Bill had gone to wash his hands. Suddenly I felt cold and I glanced into the corner of the room, said Betty. I could not believe my eyes. A whitish hazy light sort of appeared through the wall, and as it moved into the room, I could see it was a woman. It was clearly a shape of a woman, and whilst I stared at her, she vanished right before my eyes. Betty felt rooted to the spot, and she had not even heard her husband returned. He sat and listened to what she had to say, then suggested a gin and tonic as a chaser to the other spirit. It's not funny, it was there, said Betty, and she added, Bill took it all too lightly and told me to forget it. In 1984, Mrs. Winifred Grant got in touch with me after reading Ghosts That Haunt Our Old Airfields in the Sunday Mercury. She wrote to say that she was interested in finding out more about the ghost that is said to haunt the Old Parsonage Hotel, after she and her husband had stayed a weekend there in August 1984. The Old Parsonage was then run by John and Therese Bolt, who had been there under 12 months. So is the Old Parsonage haunted? It has certainly changed hands many times. Does the White Lady hold the reason why? On the Sunday evening, Winifred's husband went for a walk around the village. He got into conversation with two of the locals who informed him that the Old Parsonage was haunted and asked if he had seen the ghost. Mr. Grant told his wife, and the next morning he asked the landlord about the ghost. He said there had been many sightings of it during the last 12 months, but he did not say he had seen it, said Mrs. Grant. He said one sighting was, he believed, genuine. It was seen in the hotel bar, a white shape, possibly a lady, by a man, a complete stranger who had only been in the hotel 5 minutes and had never been in the area before. As previously stated, the old parsonage was once the dwelling place of a parson. He had been in charge of the tithe barn, which is across the road, and has today been converted into 2 houses and 2 flats, which gives some indication of its original size. During the war, Americans were billeted in the house, so there is some wartime connection. It is said that the original stone roof was sold to America. This could be true, for after the war, the tithe barn had a galvanized tin roof. The 2 little cottages that nest at the side of the old parsonage were built around 1801 and presumably once belonged to the parsonage when it was a farm. The cottages were sold back to the parsonage when it was converted to a hotel sometime after 1959. Mr. Davis was born in one of the little cottages near the old parsonage. My mother and myself were born in these cottages and we grew up there, he said. My grandmother, who owned the 2 cottages, was born in 1887, just around the corner in Tower Hill Road. And he added, I have never heard my grandmother, mother, or anyone ever mention a ghost in the parsonage, and believe, for one reason or another, that it's a modern invention. But that does not mean to say that the old parsonage is not haunted. Different people have reported seeing a ghost of a lady, and that could be the reason for change of ownership. But what about the secret passages? That could be true. But Mr. Davis has his doubts about that too, as he explains. There has always been talk about a mysterious passage that was supposed to run from the cellars to the church, and I have always been interested in the stories. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce. The cottages were only 2 up, 2 down affairs, but in our living room floor there was either a crack in the floor or a loose stone. This gave rise that there could be a secret passage, but I never saw the floor because, after the fashion of those days, it was covered in linoleum. Anyway, if one trod on this crack or loose stone, it moved. I often said, "Oh, Granny, is that the secret passage?" And visitors would often remark so. My grandmother was always adamant that no passage, secret or otherwise, ran from the house, and she always maintained that, as a child, she had seen the entrance to a passage in one of the barns opposite. This was supposed to have been uncovered by workmen, and when they had finished, it was covered up again. So we ask, is there a ghost? Is there a secret passage? And if so, are they linked to the church? Is it a mystery? It is a mystery, and one who would like it solved is Louise M. Brazier, who wrote to me in November 1987. We are the proprietors of the old parsonage, having acquired it some 6 months ago. We have, of course, heard many stories of the sightings of the White Lady, as she is known, but no one seems to know the origin of her existence. We have heard that Mr. Davis thought a secret passage most unlikely, but on the other hand, he did say he never saw the floor, and there was a crack or loose stone. That could have been the secret passage. If not, what was it? A crack or a loose stone, Bruce. Never mind. Not a cellar in only a 2 up, 2 down cottage, that is for sure. And you do not get smoke without fire, and Mr. Davis said. My grandmother was always adamant that no passage, secret or otherwise, ran from the house. But that would be a natural reaction, for it could be very dangerous to have children looking for the secret passage. So, with children around, it would only be wise to deny any secret passage ever existed, to stop them looking for it. Would it have been possible for a secret passage? Yes, but difficult. Barn Street descends quite steeply, and at the time the secret passage would have been built, the land at the bottom had to be dug to a great depth. Not impossible, though, but it would have needed much more labour and would then hardly have been secret. Still, that is not impossible. Secret tunnels do exist, and I think it quite possible that there is a secret passage. But Mr. Davis said, if such an entrance ever existed, then I think my grandmother probably saw the entrance to some sort of cellar. That I doubt. It was not a cellar. I am certain that the secret passage is there. As for the White Lady, I will leave to the regulars of the old parsonage. After a few pink ladies, it might be possible to see the White Lady. You'll have a thunderclap. Let's try it again. Halftime. Goodness me. If only we had a packet of wasabi mixed rice snacks to tuck into. What do you know? We do. What have we been up to today? I have been down doing an event down at that there Glastonbury. So that was good fun. Nice drive out there. Obviously, I stayed up last night and watched the football. Very disappointing, but hey ho, we got through to another semi-final. Oh, they're hot. So, fan mail. Let's just read the fan. Oh, we've got some fan mail here. Let's just read the fan mail. Oh, let's have some more wasabi mix. So yeah, nice trip, nice drive down to Glastonbury tonight via Wells. It is a brilliantly life-affirming journey, and I did enjoy it. And I, driving back, felt very positive, which is unusual for me. So tomorrow should be a solid day of work. And then in the evening, BBC Proms, brilliant. Looking forward to that. Bear with. Bear with. Friends messaging me. Did come home tonight with a free pallet though, so I should be breaking that up over the weekend to make another raised bed. Oh my goodness me, it's so hot tonight, so airless and muggy, but so let us crack on mit the ghost stories. The next one tonight is Murder Cabin. This incident happened in the early 1950s on the main railway line between Stubbins Junction and Helmshaw, just north of Bury in Lancashire. In November 1959, William Bill Whitehead joined the railway company at Bury and was taken to join the work gang at the Helmshore end of the railway line. It was not long before they were ready to move down towards what was to become known as the murder cabin. For Bill Whitehead, it was to be where he had his first encounter with a ghost, and he remembers it well. Got to try and think of a voice for this one. Slange. Let me just think of a bit. Right, we'll try a voice. The first encounter I had with the ghost was one morning. I was walking the length of track, and on my return journey, I decided to sit in the cabin to shelter from the rain. I had been in the cabin about 10 minutes when suddenly the apparition came in. Bill Whitehead sat speechless and was unable to move. He continued, "It was shaped like a person, all white, but you could see through it. But I could see through it. It was also very weird, and as it passed by me, I felt an icy draft. After the rain had ceased, I left the cabin and continued on my way to rejoin the rest of the gang. I didn't say anything to the men for fear of them thinking I was crackers." Bill Whitehead was indeed a very sane, down-to-earth man. He had not been told that the wayside cabin was haunted, and that cold, wet November morning ghosts were far from his mind. He was more interested in trying to keep dry and warm. Oh, the beer burps at 38 minutes and 28 seconds. There we go. Do apologize, folks. But haunted it was. In the early 1950s, two platelayers working with a gang on permanent way repairs and maintenance on the main line between Helmshore and Stubbins Junction had an argument one day which gradually escalated into a serious matter. What was a joke soon got out of hand, and hate built up very quickly between them. As the quarrel escalated, the two men carried on working in the same gang, but rarely speaking a civil word to each other. Then one morning, whilst the rest of the gang were working further up the line, one of the men absents himself and, finding an axe in one of the cabins, hid himself behind the door, standing on one of the seats in the corner. His enemy, who was walking the length of the track, shortly passed the cabin, and noticing that the door was partly open when he knew that it should have been shut and locked, decided to look in to see if vandals had been in and done any damage. As he crossed over to the cabin, stood for a few seconds, then pushed the door wide open and went inside. As he entered the cabin, the axe came down on his head, killing him instantly, and he fell with blood pouring from his head. A few days after Bill Whitehead had seen the ghost, he was again in the haunted cabin, but this time it was with the rest of the gang. They had just settled down in the cabin for their afternoon tea. The flasks and cigarettes were out, and the men were just settling down for 10 minutes, when suddenly the apparition entered. "The ghost made his way to the corner that he had occupied before I saw him," said Bill. "I don't know if I had shown any signs on my face, but my ganger said, 'It's all right, Bill, it's only Charlie come in for a warm.' So I replied, 'Yes, I've already met him once.'" The main line with the murder cabin has now been closed and taken up along with another one. Bill Whitehead and the gang moved when the line was closed, and he said, both lines are now no more. So I presume that the murder cabin has also gone along with all the others." And he added, "I was not unduly scared of the apparition because I believe that they mean no harm to anyone, only revisiting old places and acquaintances. For train enthusiasts and ghost hunters, the lower branch line Stubbins to Rawtenstall has recently reopened. So the ghost still has a line to walk. Removing the murder cabin would not remove the ghost. Not convinced about that one, but never mind. I think we read that one last time. No, well, we will read The Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine, but we will mark it. Oh, what do you know? Uh-oh, Dead Soldier. So that's the next beer we're having tonight is Hive Mind Mead and Brew Company Nectar Honey Pilsner, 4.5%. I got this one in Monmouth the other week when I was there with friend Tara. It says, a delicious fresh Pilsner brewed on malt and honey using authentic Pilsner malt and hopped with Saaz and Halter 2 blank, giving notes of gooseberry with wild flowers and an upfront hint of honey aroma. We are Hive Mind beekeepers and brewers specializing in brewing modern mead and honey beers. Ingredients, allergens involved: water, malted barley, honey, hops, yeast. Vegetarian, 4.5%. So, but I am going to say that, sorry, I'm trying to open this can without destroying, oops, Daisy, destroying my nails. We managed to agitate that can a bit too much, but never mind. Talking of nails, I have been painting my nails because I have very fragile nails. So I have been painting them with a clear varnish, a hardening varnish, and yeah, very relaxing. In fact, when Reg and I were on the, that's what I didn't tell you about. Goodness me. We'll wait for the beer to settle there. What was I thinking? What have I been up to? Right, here we go. This was yesterday. So Reginald and I were out on that there West Somerset Railway. Like I say, we decided to do a trip yesterday before the disappointing football. So we went from Dunster into Dunster. So we stopped off at Dunster Station and walked into Dunster Village, which was absolutely brilliant. So there we are outside that there Dunster Station. There we are outside that there Dunster Station. And then we walked up into Dunster Village. What did we see? Oh, that was an amusing old railway advertisement, which made us both smirk because we're puerile. There is the Folly on Dunster. Absolutely brilliant. Must get up there at some stage. And this is the walk from the station. So this is the Sea Lane to Dunster Beach and the Riverside Jubilee Walk to Dunster Village. Absolutely stunning, really is. And there's the river, so that's the path we walked along. And then there are these huge fronds just the other side of the Riverside Jubilee Walk to Dunster Village. Stand by, there is Reg with these huge fronds. Oh, goodness me. They are wild rhubarb, apparently. Brazilian rhubarb or South American rhubarb, but absolutely mahoosive. And that was nice. That was kind of like just a little wildflower patch with a bench, but absolutely decorated with poppies and other flowers. Absolutely brilliant. Another river, absolutely stunning. I'm using the word absolutely tonight, but it's worth it. This was brilliant. And there's Reg surveying the one of the streams. Then we stopped for victuals, Reg had a sausage roll. I had this kind of marmalade cake, which was delicious. So we had that in Dunster. Those were some begonias, I do declare. Are they begonias? I'm sure they are. I should know. I've got them growing on my patio here. What do you do on Thursday night? I tuned in to watch Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra on a Thursday, but instead he was faffing around with OBS Identify as usual. Busy Lizzie, apparently. There we go. Oh, it's Impatiens. Yeah, I do beg your pardon. I do have some of them in some tubs outside that I bought, so I need to get them dug in somewhere. Anyway, there we go. Impatiens. Busy Lizzie. Dunster, the Dunster Market area, absolutely fabulous. Love it. Love Dunster. And then I went into Dunster Castle, where they had some exhibitions, which was great fun. National Trust, I'm a big supporter of that. So, yep, love it. And that's the view from Dunster Castle. Oh my goodness me. I am hoping in the autumn to be looking forward to hopefully taking friend Laura to Dunster Castle. It is, technically speaking, her Christmas present, her birthday present. She's watching this thinking, Christmas present, it's my bloody birthday present. It is her birthday present. So there we go. That's the view. It is stunning. And there is Dunster Castle itself. Just love it. Absolutely love it. And that's the view out there towards the Bristol Channel. And indeed, the West Somerset Railway runs along the coast in the distance. And there is some gurning idiot from Dudley enjoying the sunshine. That was an allium I saw. Actually, I'll tell you what it is. Because it's, yet again, it's one of these things that I come across all these plants that I think, why am I not growing them in my garden? And it's quite frankly, it's a lack of preparation. So scrolls up. There we go. It is a Sinara unknown. Yeah, Sinara unknown, but absolutely stunning. Must grow that in my garden. And there is a gurning idiot again. He came across an old Mini. Oh, I miss my old Mini. But as I was driving back from Glastonbury tonight, I was driving behind a couple in an old white Mini. Oh, I felt so jealous. But never mind. And that is on the underpass that goes underneath the road into Dunster Village. There are these kids' paintings, and that's the one of the Queen, her Madge. I love that. It's so beautifully innocent. I just, puts a smile on my face every time I see it. And those were, oh goodness me, I'll tell you what those were. What did you do on Thursday night? I tuned in to watch Ghost Stories, but instead, a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head was too busy doing live updates on all the bloody flowers he saw. That is because Reg and I saw this and we were umming and ahhing what they are. Oh, it's a Willigia unknown. Oh well. Hey ho. And there we are at the Luttrell Arms pub, enjoying the sun out the back. Absolutely brilliant out there. And that's the walk back to the station. And there we go. So that was yesterday's walk. Relatively short, 2.5 miles, but utterly brilliant in every respect. So great fun, absolutely great fun. So fingers crossed, we'll be back down there again probably week after next. So, oh, and look who's come to join us. It's oh, dearie me. I think you've had enough to drink, sir. It's his derpy lurpiness. Where have you been? What are we up to? 51 minutes. Where have you been, derpy? Hey, I know you want food, don't you? I can read you like a book, son. So, We started with no, not up there, Derps. We started with Ghost Watch and ghost hunting. So let us end with a gold hunting story and a little mystery. There are many legendary tales of treasure, and we still have the mystery of Lake Toplitz in Austria. Come on down. Come on, you are blocking the camera, and all people can see is your bum. At the end of the Second World War, the Germans hid many boxes in the lake. They contained gold, jeweled ornaments from churches, forged English £5 notes, and American $50 bills, and many, many documents that hold many war secrets. Many people have tried to retrieve the treasure, but it is very difficult, for the lake bed is completely covered with logs. A few years ago, an American naval team tried to get to the boxes, but it was called off after 2 divers died on the lake bottom in very mysterious circumstances. A mystery. But let us get on with our gold hunting mystery. Come on. I do apologize, folks. All you can see at the moment is a cat's backside. Come on, down you come. Come on. If people want to see an arse, they go onto the Reform UK website. Sorry, the Reform UK Limited website. So Slange. Oh, that's very nice. That is very, very nice. For the second time tonight, we have a dead soldier and Run VT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
The Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. Arizona's superstitious mountains hold the secret of the Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine, which was named after Dutch-born Jacob Waltz. What this has to do with ghost stations, I do not know. This is Bruce going off on a tangent again. Anyway, Arizona is rich in legends. People existed throughout the area from about 25,000 BC. Oh, the beer burps again. Do apologize. But the nomadic Apache and Navajo Indians arrived within only a few centuries of the Spanish invaders. Early Spanish invaders were only concerned in finding the fabled 7 golden cities. But by the 1840s, the land was virtually emptied after the Apaches took to the warpath. After the Mexican War, Arizona was ceded as part of New Mexico to the United States in 1848. By the 1850s, the California gold brought prospectors into the area, but the Civil War allowed the Apaches to keep the bloody war going in a lawless area. The legends were born with Indian leaders like Cochise and Geronimo. But the Indians did not stop those hell-bent on striking gold, and one such man was Jacob Waltz, who dreamed of finding the biggest gold mine. His dream came true when he and his prospecting partner befriended a Mexican who told Waltz about a rich gold mine that he and his family had found. Waltz eagerly listened as the little Mexican babbled out details about the mine and how they had to flee the mine when the Apache Indians took to the warpath, killing most of the prospectors. The Mexicans were clearly afraid to return, but the seeds of wealth had been sown, and Waltz and his partner were soon burning with gold fever. They soon persuaded the Mexican to return to the gold mine and that they would ride with him to protect him with their guns. After a difficult journey, the 3 men reached the gold mine deep in the superstitious mountains. The arid land was fraught with many dangers, not only from the Apache, but also the deadly rattlesnakes, the scorpion, and the Gila monster. One bite from any of them would be fatal. Water was a priceless commodity, But the lust for gold was so great that Walt soon had bags of gold and was preparing to return. Suddenly, the Apaches attacked them and, they were so preoccupied with all the gold that they were caught unawares. Misunderstanding the use of and a comma there, Bruce, yet again. Guarding the gold, Waltz looked for the Mexican, but he had completely disappeared, leaving behind his bag of gold. With one hand clutching the bags of gold, Waltz fired at the Apaches. As the smoke cleared, the Dutchman saw his partner lay dying, and while the Apaches prepared to attack again, Waltz managed to escape to safety. But in his hurry, he had lost much of his gold. Word soon spread about the rich gold mine, and the Dutchman was hounded day and night for information about the mine. Waltz refused to say where the mine was, vowing that he would go back for more gold. But he died of pneumonia before he had the chance to do so. He took his secret to his grave. However, he did leave some clues as to the gold mine's whereabouts. One was that the mine was at a canyon and in sight of Weaver's Needle, the name given to a strange peak. Also, Waltz had repeatedly said that no one on horseback would ever find the gold mine, for the country was too inaccessible. One could only get to it on foot, for the step-like escarpments were very rugged. In the 1870s and 1880s, settlers began to take root in the area as ranches and towns finally spread into former Indian territory. During this period, the gold seekers searched the hills, and rumors were rife about the lost Dutchman's gold mine. Then, in 1880, two soldiers stumbled into the assay office with handfuls of gold nuggets, claiming to have found the lost Dutchman's gold mine. The two soldiers babbled on about the gold mine and of gold beyond their wildest dreams. After a few days' rest and replenished with supplies, the two soldiers set off back to the gold mine. They were never seen again, and the secret of the lost Dutchman's gold mine disappeared with them. It is said that their voices can be heard on the wind around the superstitious mountains. Derps, I think we'll have some more beer. Slangeby Bar. We done the hour? No, can't see. I'm too far away from the Mac. Not quite the hour yet. Over the years, hundreds of people have tried to find the rich gold mine of Jacob Waltz, and dozens have perished in the attempt. All those who were found were all headless. It was said their last cries were borne on the winds of the Superstition Mountains to warn others not to follow. But gold fever is hard to shake off, and one man to catch gold fever and who tried to find the lost Dutchman's gold mine was James Cravey. In 1947, he went by helicopter to the Superstition Mountains. After unloading his supplies, he set off on foot to search for the Dutchman's gold mine. But within days, he was dead. When James Cravey's skeleton was found, it was without his head. And at that time, it was discovered voices could be heard in the wind. The lost Dutchman's gold mine has never been found, and the mysterious deaths have never been explained. Many people think that Jacob Waltz is still guarding the secret of his gold mine. Some people think the gold mine was destroyed in an earthquake that shook the Arizona regions in the 80s. But many think the gold mine was filled in by the Apache Indians. Evidence of this comes from a prospector who, in 1912, was told by an old Apache that he knew where the gold mine was.
The Indian told the prospector that the mine had been filled in sometime before the late 1880s by the squaws of the tribe. After the mine had been filled in, the surface was smoothed over to wipe away any traces. Only the winds know the secret. And occasionally voices are heard in the wind, keeping alive the legend of the lost Dutchman's gold mine. Do the ghostly winds in Arizona ghost towns hold the key? Is the answer blowing in the wind? I have no idea what any of that has got to do with airfields. Just have a quick look to see if there are any nice short ones that we can add to the list. Just have a quick look. Sorry, folks. I'm just trying to find. Yeah. I think we'll find a couple of nice short ones. I think we'll have some more wasabi rice mix as well. So fine. There he is. The star of the show. Has to get on the act, doesn't he? No, we don't need you to stand in front of the camera, Derpy. No, and you can't have any of my scotch. Come on. Down you come. People have seen your ass enough times tonight. Come on down. The fickle finger of fate. Let's mark this one, Derps. We know they've read this one. We have just seen how superstition was very rife with most air crews. Just before operations, a wrong word could be fatal for the superstitious crew members. This was very much so for Flight Lieutenant Charles Ellis of number 467 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force, based at Waddington in Lincolnshire. On the night of the 1st and 2nd of February 1945, Bomber Command scheduled a raid against the town and marshalling yards at Siegen, just east of Cologne. A total force of 271 Lancasters, of which 22 were from number 467 Squadron, were detailed for the attack. My regular crew weren't flying that night, said Flight Lieutenant Ellis. Flight Lieutenant Keith Livingstone's rear gunner in Lancaster G. George went sick, and as squadron gunnery leader, it was my responsibility to nominate a replacement gunner, and I nominated myself. Because it would be the last trip to complete my second tour of operations and Flight Lieutenant Livingstone's final trip to complete his cruise tour, I jokingly said to Ray Brown, the mid-upper gunner, prior to briefing, with a coincidence that we were a moral to get the chop tonight. After the briefing, the intelligence officer informed the assembled crews, as was the practice during that stage of the war, to take no risks in the event of being shot down over Germany, as the end of the war was imminent. Over Siegen, low unbroken clouds spoilt bombing conditions. However, during the bomb run, the bomber crews aimed at sky markers laid by the Pathfinder force, which rapidly became merged with the glare of incendiaries. Lancaster G. George, with Flight Lieutenant Ellis on board, Lancaster G. George, with Flight Lieutenant Ellis on board as their rear gunner, made its bombing run and was just pulling out of the target area when the intercom crackled into life. "Bombing with the skipper. There is a 1,000-pound bomb hung up in the bomb bay." But before the skipper could answer, G. George received a direct hit in the starboard wing, and the starboard engine burst into flames. The German night fighter had attacked them without being seen. Charles Ellis had not seen any fighters from his rear turret, so it would appear the attack had come from the front of the aircraft. The Lancaster had in fact been hit by a German night fighter using a pair of 20mm cannon mounted in the fuselage, and arranged to fire upwards and forwards in the fuselage, and arranged to fire upwards and enabled. Been a long day, folks. And arranged to fire upwards and forwards, which enabled the night fighter to attack from below. This was the blind spot for the bomber crews and an area they could not defend. For Flight Lieutenant Ellis, the attack came as a shock. The next thing I remember is the flight engineer saying, "Where is my parachute?" he said. The skipper called over the intercom and said, "Looks like we've had it, chaps. You better bail out." I was wearing a back-type parachute and, turning the turret, got out onto the fuselage. Going forward, I met the mid-upper gunner, who had already jettisoned the escape hatch. The flames from the fire in the engine and probably the wing fuel tanks were streaming down the side of the aircraft. Ray Brown said, "You bastard, Ellis, you've mossed us." He then turned and disappeared through the escape hatch. I followed suit, and the next thing I knew was a welcome jerk. We all like a welcome jerk on the parachute harness, which indicated that the chute had opened. While descending, I could still hear Ellis, who was, of course, floating down below me, saying, "You bastard, Ellis." I saw the burning G. George pass underneath me, and then it appeared to turn back on another course, and the thought flashed through my mind, "Hell, the skipper's attempting to fly back to base and leave us in Germany." I was not to know at the time that the skipper was apparently endeavouring to control G. George, but his gallant efforts were to be of no avail, and the aircraft crashed, and he died with her. Charles Ellis still had Ray Brown's words ringing in his ears as he plunged into a deep snowdrift. He quickly snapped out of his parachute harness and buried it, together with his parachute and his flying suit, in the snowdrift. It was only later that he realized that he had left his escape kit in his flying suit. After a cold night spent in a train carriage, Ellis was taken prisoner. Over the next 2 days, the remainder of the crew were rounded up, making a total of 7, for G. George had been carrying a second Dickey pilot, and this apparently had satisfied the Germans, for a normal Lancaster bomber crew was 7. And this apparently had satisfied the Germans, for a normal Lancaster bomber crew was 7. After a spell at the interrogation center in Frankfurt, the crew were then taken to a holding center in Nuremberg and marched to Stalag 7A, Moosburg, northeast of Munich, from whence they were eventually liberated by the American Army. The skipper, 155465 Flight Lieutenant J.K. Livingstone, DFC, RAF, was killed over Siegen on the 1st of February 1945, whilst pilot of Lancaster NG 197 of number 467 Squadron. He was originally buried at Rangsdorf Cemetery. However, in 1948, his body was transferred to Rheinberg Military Cemetery. Members of the crew who became prisoners of war were 102110 Squadron Leader D.O. Sands, DSO, DFC, RAF, Navigator, 53553 Flight Officer E.G. Parsons, DFC, RAF, Flight Engineer, 412818 Flight Officer W.D. McMahon, Royal Australian Air Force, Bomb Aimer, 182270 Pilot Officer J. Pendergast, Royal Air Force, Wireless Operator, 172986 Flight Officer R.N. Brown, RAF, Mid-Upper Gunner, 418931 Flight Lieutenant E.C. Ellis, Royal Australian Air Force, Rear Gunner, and 432138 Flight Officer R.W.G. Eagle, Royal Australian Air Force, second pilot. Had Flight Lieutenant Charles Ellis put the fickle finger of fate on the crew of G. George? It makes one think. From the 22 crews that set out for Siegen, only Charles Ellis and his crew failed to return. Was it the fickle finger of fate? I'm going to say no. Well, Derbs, I'm going to clear a space for you on the bed there. Oh. There we go. He's happy now. Oh, I think we'll have some more wasabi mix. Right. Last for tonight. And we did read the Harrier jet mystery the other night because I recounted the fact that back in 1987, I did see what I thought was a Harrier 2 flying over that night. And I still can't account for the fact that I definitely saw a Harrier 2 fly over at the same time that a Harrier GR5 had gone missing on the same flight path. Honestly, it beggars belief. It really does. So anyway, what are we up to? Hour and 15 minutes. This will be the last one for tonight. So cheers, me beard. Sledge. The Mingaladon mystery. In 1947 to 48, Squadron Leader Harry Payne was serving at Royal Air Force Mingaladon in Burma. The station was handed over to the Burmese Air Force when they left in 1948. Mingaladon is situated about 25 miles from the city of Rangoon, and for those at the RAF airfield, There was very little to do in this far-flung corner of the world. Goodness me, folks. Actual proper use of an and a comma by Bruce Barrow Halpenny. Wonders will never cease. Squadron leader Payne was in charge of the area control center, but there was very little activity, for Royal Air Force Mingala Don housed only a Dakota squadron plus a few Bristol Brigands and the odd de Havilland Mosquito aircraft, which were used for weather flights. The whole station was suffering from total boredom, as indeed are the audience to the show. And to ease the boredom, Harry Payne participated in the following incident, the outcome of which he still cannot explain. It was 9 o'clock one Sunday evening, and 4 of us were sitting in our mess lounge bar, he said. There was little to do, and we were bored stiff. The 4 of us, Jock, Buck, Fred, and I, plus the local Burmese barman, were the only occupants. It was Harry who broke the silence. Has anyone got any ideas on what we could do to pass the time? He asked. They looked at each other as if in deep thought. Then, after what seemed an eternity, Buck asked, Have you ever tried out the wine glass and alphabet trick? No, they all replied, not having any idea what he was talking about, but being so bored we were willing to try anything, said Harry. Buck went over to the bar and returned with a wine glass, one with a nice fluted stem and a fairly large circular base. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce. Following Buck's instructions, they got some card on which to print the letters of the alphabet, and while they were busy doing this, Buck told them to make 28 pieces, for 2 pieces were needed for yes and no. As soon as they had completed their task, they handed them over to Buck, who arranged the letters clockwise, A to Z, around the circular edge of the table. After the Z, he placed the yes and no cards. He then inverted the wine glass and placed it in the center of the table. Whilst Buck was doing this, the other 3 sat back waiting for instructions. All 3 felt that it was much more than a parlor game and glanced at each other in silence. No one spoke when Buck told them to place their right forefinger on the right-hand side of the base of the wine glass. The reason for doing this, Buck explained, was to stop people cheating by pushing the glass. They all followed his instructions, but at this point, Jock, the comedian of the group, said, "Eyes down for a full house," which brought an instant retort from Buck to keep it serious and to let him ask the questions. Dead silence reigned for the longest 2 minutes of my life, said Harry Payne. Then Buck intoned, "Is there anybody there?" And I was tempted to reply yes, 3 other idiots beside you, but thought the better of it and restrained myself. As they all concentrated on the wine glass as hard as they could, the local barman looked on with a bemused expression on his face. He probably thought they were all balmy and a few sheets to the wind as Buck continued repeating, "Is there anybody there?" Another long silence ensued, and then Fred asked what was supposed to happen. Buck quietly told him that if they all got tuned in, the presence will start to move the wine glass to either yes or no, or to the letters of the alphabet, spelling out a message. I felt a bit strange at this stage, said Harry, and I clearly recall how reverently he said the word presence. They continued with their efforts, but to no avail. The wine glass never moved from its central position. Suddenly, Fred broke away from the group and stood up. At this point, I looked at my watch and saw that we had passed 2 hours away, said Harry. Fred glanced at the glass and said that if the presents turned up, to say hello from him, and with that he made his way to the bar, muttering that he was going to have a nightcap and then to bed. Fred made his way to the bar. Fred made his way to the bar. The education officer walked into the lounge and Buck immediately called across to him. That doesn't scan right. As Fred made his way to the bar, the education officer walked into the lounge and Buck immediately called across to him. Come and join us, Sandy. We need 4 to do this, he said. With that, Sandy made his way over to them and took over Fred's seat. Buck quickly explained to him what they were trying to do. Meantime, Fred had finished his nightcap and bid them all good night. As they settled down, another period of concentration began, with Buck intoning, "Is anyone there?" But this time, to the amazement of everyone, the wine glass moved slowly across to the yes card. In reply to Buck's questioning, the glass moved, as if by some unseen hand, around the table and spelt out a message that was for Sandy. At this stage of the proceedings, I must admit that both Jock and I were a little uneasy about continuing, said Harry. But we did, and the glass carried on spelling its message, which was that Sandy's father had died. That did it, and Sandy stood up very hot under the collar. I don't think that's very funny. One doesn't joke about things like that, he said. Having said his piece, Sandy departed in high dudgeon. Jock, Buck, and Harry Payne remained seated around the table, discussing what had happened. We were all adamant that nobody had tried to cheat by pushing the glass, said Harry. And he continued, I must say, though, I had a very uneasy feeling about the whole thing, and after about 10 minutes we all retired to bed. The time was 11:30 p.m. I think we'll have a quick swig of the old beer. Oh, Derp's up on the windowsill, slamming me by. Cheers, me beers. The following morning, Jock, Buck, and Harry Payne sat discussing the events of the previous evening over breakfast. They all denied having done anything, and Harry said, I couldn't see Sandy being the culprit, not from what he had said after it had happened. Oh, the beer burps. Do apologise, folks. None of them saw Sandy until later. When he came into the lounge after lunch. In his hand was a piece of paper. It was a cable which he had received 30 minutes earlier. He handed the cable to Buck and told him to read it out to the rest of them. As I heard what he was saying, I could feel a cold shiver of fear and incredulity coming over me, said Harry. The cable said simply, regret to inform you that your father passed away 4:30 p.m. Sunday. Harry Payne continued. You can imagine our feelings when we heard the news. The cable was genuine and had only been received half an hour before. They were all shattered at the news, and everyone was speechless. Then Buck remarked, 4:30 p.m. in England would be 11 p.m. our time last night, just before Sandy joined us. There was no way Sandy could have known. There was no way Sandy could have known this at the time, and his father had not been ill. He had not received the cable until Monday lunchtime, after which he had made his way to the mess. The final word comes from Harry Payne. None of us could explain it. We didn't know how it happened, but you can rest assured that we never again tried out the wine glass and alphabet trick to pass the time. They say that there are many things happening in this world of ours which cannot be explained logically or rationally. And as far as I am concerned, this was one of them. And Harry Payne added, the time difference between the two countries is 6.5. The time difference between the two countries is 6.5 hours. And I think that was one of the things that made us all have a good think about what had gone on. I have often thought about it since, but still cannot come up with an explanation as to what happened or what force was moving that glass. I think that definitely deserves a thunderclap. Just going to read that again. And Harry Payne added, the time difference between the two counties is 6.5 hours, and that was one of the things that made us all have a good think about what had gone on. I have often thought about it since, but still cannot come up with an explanation as to what happened or what force was moving that glass. We've read the Harrier Jet mystery, just scrolling forward. We read the hauntings at Hanley Page. Read that one, the old parsonage hotel. Do you know what? We might be onto the Devil's Quoits. We probably have read these ones before, but what the hell? Right, that's it for tonight. Slange me var. Oh, cheers, me beers. Oh, delicious, deliciouser. That's it for tonight. Fingers crossed. We'll be back for Sunday we'll be back on Sunday for Sunday Night Ghost Stories. The original, the best, the slightly confusing. Like I say, tomorrow night we will be BBC Proms. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to it for the simple reason that the first night of the Proms is literally that bridge footstep into the autumna. And I do love the autumna. So anyway, until Sunday, as ever, thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and please don't have nightmares. Good night.